It's tough to get into this business. You guys know that. It's so tough, especially in this market. I've always said that growing up here in this market is a blessing and a curse because there's so much opportunity to learn here, whether you're radio, whether you're TV, web, whatever you guys are doing. There's so much opportunity to learn here from different people, different stations, etc. But then when it comes time to get a job, you know, it's number 3 market in the country. People here have been doing this for 25, 30 years. They're seasoned pros. You know, stations want people who are seasoned veterans. So it's hard to get a job, especially here. But I had an advantage to start. Right out of college, I interned at WGN Radio, summer of 2009. And what I did there, I sort of learned the basics of working in a radio station, from using Adobe Audition and putting highlights on the air, cutting highlights, how a highlight should sound, a baseball highlight should sound. I learned how to write a sportscast, a sports update that you hear on different sports stations, some of the inner workings of a radio station, how programming works with sales with traffic, et cetera, and how the on-air product is sort of the end product of a lot of hard work. What makes a good phone call? Especially in sports radio, you hear a lot of people call and, you know, they just want to talk about the Bulls, why they suck, why they're good, etc. So you learn what makes a good phone call. All that you do in an internship, and it's a great experience. But like I said, when it comes time to get a job, when the internship is over, what happens? So what I did after my internship at WGN, I was hired as a part-time freelance producer, doing Cubs games, Northwestern football games, Blackhawks games, all back at the studio, cutting highlights, screening phone calls for the post-game show. It's a great experience, not ultimately what I wanted to do. So I looked at every market, 50 and below, some of the smaller markets in the country, ended up being almost 200 markets, 200 stations that I sent my resume, my demo, and a sort of inquiry letter to. It was several $100s worth of postage, supplies, CDs, you know, paper, ink, all that, almost $400, I think. I heard back from 5. Most of them were return to sender, address not found. So it was kind of like, okay, what am I getting myself into? Well, I kept at it, and I was listening to the radio one day, heard a commercial for the Illinois Center for Broadcasting. You know, they said you could have your own radio show, learn about the business, et cetera, et cetera. So I checked it out and ended up enrolling here at ICB, and JR, who just left, was one of my teachers, Rob Rose, another for radio. And one of the things that attracted me to ICB was a chance to learn TV, to try TV. I'd never tried TV before. Figured out that it was not for me, stuck with radio. But anyways, the experiences I got here and working with different people, working in different formats, because I had only done sports. I didn't know how to be a DJ. I didn't know how to do a weather report, traffic report, etc. I learned all that stuff. I learned great skills that I still use even in a sports job. And then as Bill said, I had my own show on Chicagoland Sports Radio. So, you know, learning how to put a show together, interviewing guests, booking guests, et cetera, et cetera. It's all fantastic hands-on experience in Chicago that you might not get at a real radio station. Our class started with about 30 students. We graduated with about a third of that left. I think those who started with us and didn't finish with us, they didn't work hard enough. And they thought that, hey, it's broadcasting. Let's be famous. It's not how it works. Let me tell you. Don't think for a minute that this industry is easy. No matter what aspect of broadcasting you're in, whether you're in front of the camera, behind the camera, a producer, on-air talent, it's not easy. While I was, after actually I graduated, while I was working at GN, one night I ran into a guy by the name of Tom Langmeyer. Probably don't know that name. He was the general manager of WGN at the time, and he knew one of his friends, who he had worked with in the past, in Hartford, Wisconsin, was looking for a morning show host and a sports director, so that ended up being me. So I went up to Hartford, Wisconsin to work at small town radio, WTKM. I did the morning show. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, got to work by 5, played polka music, did polka music, polka music. Did ag reports, farm reports, High school sports, it was about 35 miles northwest of Milwaukee, but we wanted to have nothing to do with Milwaukee. My boss wanted to be very hyper-local, small town stuff where a barn fire was a huge story. Huge story. So I learned how to be a DJ, do weather reports, write news, gather news, cultivate sources, et cetera, et cetera. I learned how to do a lot of stuff that I would not have learned had I not gone out of Chicago. And I learned more in depth about how a radio station really works, how programming works with traffic, works with sales, and how, like I said with GN, but in more detail, how everything gets put together to put the on-air product out on the air. And I think what a lot of people who aren't in broadcasting don't necessarily realize is radio is a business just like everything else. You're trying to make money. So everything you do needs to be sponsored, got to sell ads, et cetera, et cetera. Coming back to Chicago, obviously I grew up around here, huge sports fan. I saw the launch of 87.7, the game, and I saw that as a gold mine of opportunity because it's a new station, 24 hours in a day to fill, and they needed content, they needed producers. So I called one of my previous bosses at GN, and I said, hey, congratulations on the new station. Is there opportunity for me to come back and work? And he said, yes. And I said, awesome. So that's another way that not burning bridges helps, because I use my previous contact, my previous relationship with the people at WGN to not only get an interview, but when I came in for the interview, it felt like more of a formality than an actual interview, because they said, look, you already know how we do things here. When can you start? So it was great to have that comfort level, that previous relationship, like I mentioned, and to be able to use that to parlay it into where I wanted to be, which is Chicago. And I mean, that's where I know personally for my career that I want to be. Yeah.
You said when you were on the job, you learned how to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Did they show you, or did you have to come in already like knowing?
You're talking about at GN or at?
At the local station outside of Milwaukee.
Oh, every station, wherever you go, there's going to be things where you have to learn how to do it, whether it's their way, learning different audio boards or whatever. But you are expected to know how to edit something in Adobe Audition. I mean, that's a basic skill that radio broadcasters need to know. I mean, you go to a station and you say, I don't have any experience editing audio. They're going to be like, well, what are you doing here? Because, digital editing it's what that's what we do. So knowing how to edit audio, knowing how to use a microphone. It sounds like a basic thing, but you can't yell into a microphone. Knowing how to read a VU meter, stuff like that. I mean, it's basic stuff that you need to know how to do. But they will train you on the different equipment if you're using a new program. Like in Wisconsin, we use Simian Broadcaster, which is similar to Sam Broadcaster if you've ever used the broadcast equipment in Chicagoland Sports Radio or Windy City. But it's got its nuances. So I had to learn how to use that. But as long as you're technologically, what's the word I'm looking for? Technologically savvy, inclined. You'll pick it up. I mean, it's nothing you haven't done before.
From your experience talking to, because I want to do sports broadcasting as well, play-by-play announcing specifically. Mm-hmm. Right now I have an internship with 670 Score as a producer lined up when I come back from something I'm about to do for a little bit. Is there a rivalry there? Like, if I'm at the Score, am I pretty much shunned from GN, or do they just look at it as better experience? This guy has worked with a top radio station, because I know that there's that competition.
There's competition there,
so
yeah.
What I have in my head is, am I screwing myself from ever going to WGN by taking the Score?
He's shaking his head no.
I don't think so. I mean, I work at ESPN, and I know a lot of people that have worked at both places. People that have come from the Score that work at ESPN, and people that have gone from ESPN to the Score. And now with the third place, it'll just be a big triangle. If you're good at what you do and you know what you're doing, you're going to be in demand. It doesn't matter where it is. If you can produce a show, it doesn't matter what the call letters say. It's that you're a good producer.
And it's such a small world. We all know each other. You know, I don't know how many people you know in this business. It's incredible. I'm still getting to meet everybody. But the people who have worked at different places, I mean, there's a rivalry because you want to beat each other in the ratings, but at the same time, we're all working towards the same. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't hate the guys at 670 because they're the Score or ESPN. JR works at ESPN's competition. He's my biggest mentor. So there you go. Yeah.
So you're working in Wisconsin. Were you discouraged that you weren't in Chicago? How'd you get through that?
It wasn't discouraging because I knew at some point that I'd have to go somewhere and continue my career. I always told my parents, I said, look, tomorrow I could get a job offer in Wyoming. You know, I was lucky that Hartford, Wisconsin is 2 hours away from here. I was able to come home and still see family and friends. But, you know, I know guys who have gone to Memphis for jobs, Atlanta. You know, you could go to anywhere, literally anywhere. And I was lucky that I got a job still close to home, still small market radio, don't get me wrong. We were hyper local. It was as if Milwaukee did not exist. It was as if professional sports did not exist for me. So you got that small town experience, but I was lucky to be close to home. But like I said, I knew I had to go somewhere other than Chicago to get back here. And I'm incredibly lucky that I got to come back here. I'm incredibly lucky that I got experience here and got to come back here so soon. So I'm not necessarily the rule. I may be the exception to the rule. I don't know. There are people who have never worked anywhere but Chicago. So one of the things that Alex Quigley, who's the operations manager over at GN and the game, he told me that he went to California before he came back to Chicago. So he appreciated the fact that I left and then came back and got that experience elsewhere, so that, you know, I got a little bit more well-rounded.